Hi students, this is our second lesson in personality theories, and in this one we're going to focus on the psychodynamic theory. The psychodynamic theory of personality says that human behavior is a lively or dynamic interaction between our conscious and unconscious mind, and psychodynamic theory is related to the motives and conflicts within. This came from the theories of Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis. Freud's work was the first to focus clinical attention on the unconscious mind. It teaches us that people of all kinds, well-adjusted people, have inner struggles, and these struggles come from certain biological drives and motives around aggression and sex and feelings of superiority that are constantly in battle under the surface. We don't know about them because they're subconscious or unconscious. And these urges and aggression may come into conflict with rules and laws and customs and things that you're not supposed to do that we learn in our childhood and have been internalized. So at any moment, a person's behaviors, our thoughts, and emotions represent the outcome of this inner struggle that we're not aware of. Freud was an Austrian doctor, and in his experiences, he would see patients that would come to him with the loss of their limbs. They were paralyzed from their legs down, something. And through talking with them, he found that they were angry or they're depressed or they're anxious. And so he would just start talking to them and tell them to say whatever comes to mind. And when this anger and aggression and anxious thoughts would come out, they gradually would begin to reuse the use of their limbs. They would improve. And so we thought maybe there's something to this. And so we'd make them comfortable and develop these tactics to learn more about what was buried beneath in their unconscious. So get comfortable on Freud's couch, and he would use concepts and things like free association, the popping into the mind, or dream analysis, because he believed that the inner conflicts were revealed in our dreams so we could learn more about what's going on there. Or he even used hypnosis, but towards later in his career, he got away from using hypnosis because it was difficult to prove some of the things that were revealed there. Through all this work, Freud developed what was known as the inner conflict approach. When you see an iceberg, it does not reveal everything. Of course, we know that beneath the surface is a much larger portion of the iceberg, but that is the basis of Freud's inner conflict approach. Beneath the surface of the water, there's much more, and that's what our conscious and our subconscious is. So the conscious is the stuff that we see, the stuff that we are aware of. That's like your working memory. And then beneath the surface is the subconscious, and even lower is the unconscious. Now the id and the superego are housed beneath the surface, and I'll let you know what those things are. Now here's where it gets fun. Beneath the surface, the things that we're not aware of, Sigmund Freud said that we have the id. And the id wants what it wants when it wants it, and it wants it now. It does not accept the word no. And when you think of a child, like a child is exactly like that, right? It doesn't want to share. They want food right now. And if they don't have it, they're going to start crying when they're hungry. So hunger, thirst, and sex and aggression are things that are dominating a child's life. But when we're young, we get weaned out of that because, well, you got to learn to live and exist in this world. You're going to have to share, and you're going to have to just wait on the food being prepared. So that's where we enter in the superego. And the superego, so that if the id is on one shoulder, the superego is on your other shoulder. That's the angel on your shoulder, while the id is the devil. The superego operates on what's known as the moral principle. The moral principle is telling us, no, you can't do that, and no, you're not supposed to steal things, and even though you're hungry, you have to wait. And it's their conscience. So when we have conflict between the id and the superego, if the superego doesn't get its way, you start feeling bad. We feel shame and guilt and remorse, like, oh, I stole the cookie and I wasn't supposed to, or I took the drink and now I feel bad about it. The superego is the moral principle. These are the guiding framework. We learned these when we were a child. If the id is the devil and the superego is the angel, then the ego, your head, is telling you what you're supposed to do. The ego is the reason and the good sense. It balances out the id and the superego operating on the reality principle. This is the real world. So you have to follow rules, and you can't get everything that you want immediately. Reality says you're going to have to learn to live within the rules of the structure. The ego has to balance the id and the superego, and that's what causes the anxious thoughts when we don't know about it. What we use to protect the id, the ego, the superego are defense mechanisms. So when we fall short of the mark, or we disapprove, we get the disapproval of the superego, then it equals out into defense mechanisms. We have to protect our fragile egos from harm, from the shame and the guilt and remorse. And so we develop these defense mechanisms according to Sigmund Freud. And his daughter Anna helped him develop these defense mechanisms, and see where they manifest in your life if this is true for you. So defense mechanisms are the ego protecting itself, and here are a few. First off, we have repression. When we repress, we remove the anxiety causing ideas by pushing them into the unconscious. So we just basically don't deal with something. When we repress something, it is removed. No, we're not going to deal with it. Second, we have rationalization, where we distort our anxious ideas or thoughts and use self-deception to justify unacceptable behavior or ideas. We rationalize, the test was too hard, that's why I didn't do well on it, the teacher didn't teach it. We rationalize. We also use third, displacement, where we pick on somebody smaller because we can't pick on the person who's bigger. We transfer the idea or impulse from something that's threatening to something that's non-threatening. So you got in trouble with your parents, and so you take it out on your little brother. Fourth, we have regression, where we retreat back. We return to a behavior that is a characteristic of an earlier stage of life. And so you got yelled at by your parents, and so you start sucking your thumb. With projection, we see faults in ourselves, but strike that. We don't realize that it's ourselves, but we call somebody else for a similar behavior, something that we don't like about ourselves. So I might be, oh, look at that person. They talk about people all the time, when I just did the same thing myself. So example here, mean people may be unable to see themselves as mean, but they project the mean image onto somebody else, and it helps them avoid the ego, the hurt that it would cause to the ego. Next, we have denial, where we just don't accept the bad in the situation. This is happening in politics. I won't bring it up, but smokers may deny that they have a chance for an increased chance of lung cancer. They know it's bad, but they're going to do it anyway. I deny the fact. Or it might be a drinker. I don't have a problem with this. And then we have reaction formation, where we act opposite of the true feelings. And so here's the picture. You might really like your sister, but you're going to pull her hair. All right. Sublimation is when we have maybe impulses like aggression, and we can't, it's not socially acceptable to hit people, but if we join the football team, we can. Sublimation can be a more positive way of dealing with the urges. And then you have compensation, where we strive to make up for unconscious impulses or fears, compensate, like do the opposite. So a business executive is very competitive, and so that might be aimed at compensating for unconscious feelings of inferiority. You have a picture there of Napoleon, and the rumor was that he was small, and so that was why he had to be a mighty military leader. To review the psychodynamic theory, we all have these unconscious inner conflicts. The inner conflicts are biological, based on aggression, sex, or superiority. We need to be number one. In order to exist in the world, we have to follow rules and customs, and those rules and customs get internalized when we're a kid. We learn that some things are shameful, or we feel guilt, and that exhibits itself in the id, the ego, and the superego. The ego is fragile, and it has to have a balance between superego and id. And if we don't have a good balance, then we go through these different defense mechanisms to make the ego feel better. That's all for now. Stay tuned for lesson 3, where we talk about more theories on personality.